Normandy, June 27, 1944. A single American tank commander sat in his turret watching 3 German Tiger tanks advance through morning fog across Norman hedgerow country. His Sherman tank, nicknamed Fury, mounted a 75mm gun that couldn't penetrate Tiger frontal armor even at point-blank range. The Tigers could destroy him from 2,000 meters away. Every tactical manual, every training film, every intelligence briefing said the same thing. Avoid direct engagement with Tigers, call for artillery support, request airstrikes, withdraw and regroup. But Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool didn't withdraw. Over the next 14 months, he would destroy more Tiger tanks than most entire Allied armored divisions combined, using a vehicle that military experts declared hopelessly outmatched against German heavy armor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Sherman tank entered World War II, carrying a burden of expectation it could never fulfill. American tank designers in 1940 and 1941 built a medium tank optimized for mass production, mechanical reliability, and operational sustainability. The M4 Sherman weighed 33 tons, mounted a 75mm gun, carried frontal armor between 50 and 76mm thick, and achieved road speeds near 30 miles per hour. By the standards of 1942, when Sherman production began at massive scale across multiple American factories, these specifications seemed adequate for expected combat requirements. American military planners anticipated fighting German Panzer Mark IIIs and Mark IVs, medium tanks of roughly comparable capability. Intelligence reports through early 1943 suggested German armor development focused on improved versions of existing medium tank designs. The appearance of Tiger heavy tanks in Tunisia in late 1942 and Panther medium tanks on the Eastern Front in mid-1943 fundamentally altered the tactical environment American tankers would face in Northwest Europe. By June 1944, when American armored divisions landed in Normandy, German forces fielded Tigers mounting 88mm guns with frontal armor 100mm thick, and Panthers mounting 75mm high-velocity guns with sloped frontal armor, effectively 140mm thick. Sherman tanks faced opponents with superior armor protection and superior main armament. The tactical mathematics seemed insurmountable. A Tiger could penetrate Sherman frontal armor at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. A Sherman's 75mm gun could not penetrate Tiger frontal armor at any practical combat range. Panthers could engage effectively from 1,500 meters, while Sherman guns required closing to within 300 meters for any possibility of penetrating Panther frontal armor from advantageous angles. American tank crews entering combat in Normandy understood these statistics intimately. Training films prepared tankers for the reality they would face. German tanks possessed decisive advantages in direct combat engagements. Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool joined the 3rd Armoured Division in England in March 1944 during final preparations for the Normandy invasion. Born in Odem, Texas in 1919, Pool grew up during the Great Depression in rural South Texas. He enlisted in the Army in 1941, months before Pearl Harbor, seeking stable employment and escape from Depression-era poverty. The Army assigned him to armoured forces after basic training, recognizing aptitude in mechanical systems and tactical thinking. Pool attended tank gunnery school at Fort Knox, Kentucky in early 1942, where instructors noted exceptional marksmanship and unusually calm demeanor under simulated combat stress. His service record from Fort Knox training documented consistent scores in the top 5% of gunnery students across all weapons systems. Instructors recommended Pool for promotion to tank commander upon completion of training, noting leadership qualities and technical proficiency that exceeded typical enlisted personnel. Pool arrived in Normandy with the 3rd Armoured Division on June 23, 1944, 17 days after the initial D-Day landings. The division moved into forward positions south of Carentan, preparing for the upcoming Operation Cobra breakout offensive scheduled for late July. Pool commanded a Sherman tank, the 3rd tank in the 2nd Platoon of I Company, 32nd Armoured Regiment, 3rd Armored Division. His crew consisted of 4 men besides himself: a driver, assistant driver, who also served as hull, machine gunner, a loader, and a gunner. Tank crews in the 3rd Armored Division trained together for months before deployment, building teamwork and communication essential for combat effectiveness. Pool's crew had trained together since January 1944 at Camp Polk, Louisiana, developing the coordination that would prove critical in the battles ahead. The first combat engagement came on June 27, 1944, 4 days after arriving in France. American forces pushed south from Carentan towards Saint-Lô, attempting to capture road junctions critical for the planned breakout offensive. German forces defended hedgerow country with characteristic skill, using the ancient Norman bocage terrain to devastating tactical advantage. Hedgerows, centuries-old earthen embankments topped with thick vegetation, divided Norman farmland into small irregular fields, creating natural defensive positions every 50 to 100 meters. German infantry and anti-tank guns positioned in hedgerows could ambush advancing American forces at point-blank range with minimal warning. Tank warfare in bocage country negated American advantages in numbers and mobility, reducing combat to close-range engagements, where German tactical experience and superior individual weapons provided decisive advantages. Pool's platoon advanced along a narrow farm road southeast of Carentan at approximately 0700 hours on June 27th. Morning fog reduced visibility to less than 100 meters. The lead Sherman rounded a hedgerow corner and exploded immediately, struck by an 88mm round from concealed German positions. The second Sherman reversed rapidly, attempting to withdraw to cover. Pool, commanding the 3rd tank, saw muzzle flashes through fog approximately 400 meters ahead. German doctrine positioned Tigers behind defensive lines, supporting from longer ranges where their armor and firepower advantages maximized effectiveness. But hedgerow terrain forced even Tigers into close-range engagements, where American Shermans could potentially exploit their superior mobility and faster turret traverse rates. Pool ordered his driver forward at maximum speed, moving past the burning lead tank toward the German positions. His gunner required target acquisition within seconds, identifying a Tiger tank partially concealed by hedgerow vegetation 320 meters ahead. The Sherman's 75mm gun could not penetrate Tiger frontal armor, but Pool had studied captured German technical manuals distributed to tank commanders during training in England. He knew Tiger side armor measured only 80mm thick, vulnerable to Sherman armor-piercing rounds at close range. Pool ordered hard right turn, attempting to maneuver for flank shot. The Tiger's commander, recognizing the threat, began traversing his turret to engage the rapidly approaching American tank. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Tank combat at close range becomes a race between opposing crews. Whichever crew acquires target, aims accurately, and fires first usually wins. The Tiger's 88mm gun could destroy the Sherman with a single hit anywhere on the vehicle. Pool's 75mm gun required precise shot placement against Tiger side armor for any possibility of penetration and crew kill. The Sherman's advantages were faster turret traverse rate and shorter target acquisition time. Pool's crew had trained together for 6 months, developing coordination that reduced time from target identification to accurate fire by several critical seconds compared to average tank crews. Those seconds determined survival. Pool's gunner fired first, hitting Tiger side armor just forward of the turret ring. The armor-piercing round penetrated, detonating ammunition stored inside the Tiger's fighting compartment. The Tiger exploded catastrophically, turret blown completely off the hull by secondary ammunition explosions. Pool's Sherman continued forward, moving parallel to the hedgerow where 2 additional Tigers had been positioned in support of the first. German tank doctrine emphasized mutual supporting positions, with multiple tanks covering the same defensive sector to prevent exactly the kind of flanking maneuver Pool had just executed. But bocage terrain restricted fields of fire, and morning fog further reduced visibility. The remaining Tigers couldn't engage Pool's Sherman without exposing their own vulnerable side armor to other American tanks now moving up in support. Pool's platoon destroyed all 3 Tigers within 12 minutes of first contact. Post-battle assessment conducted by 3rd Armored Division intelligence officers documented the engagement as one of the first instances where American tanks successfully engaged and destroyed multiple Tigers in direct combat, without supporting artillery or airstrikes. The intelligence report noted that aggressive tactics, superior crew coordination, and exploitation of terrain limitations on German fields of fire enabled American success despite inferior armor and armament. The report recommended distributing Pool's tactical approach throughout the division as a training example. Within weeks, multiple American tank units received tactical guidance emphasizing that Tigers, despite their considerable advantages, possessed exploitable vulnerabilities when engaged by well-coordinated crews using appropriate tactics. The engagement on June 27th established patterns that would characterize Pool's entire combat career. He understood that Sherman tanks could not win direct frontal engagements against Tigers or Panthers under most circumstances. The tactical mathematics remained insurmountable. German tanks could penetrate Sherman armor from ranges where Sherman guns couldn't effectively reply. But Pool also understood that tank combat rarely occurred under ideal conditions for either side. Terrain, visibility, crew coordination, mechanical reliability, tactical situation, and dozens of other variables affected every engagement. A tank commander who understood how to manipulate these variables could create situations where theoretical German advantages became irrelevant or even transformed into disadvantages. Pool studied captured German tactical manuals obsessively during brief periods between combat operations. 3rd Armored Division intelligence officers distributed translated German documents to tank commanders, hoping to provide insights into enemy tactics and doctrine. Most tankers skimmed the materials briefly, finding them too technical or theoretical for practical application. Pool read everything multiple times, annotating documents with observations from his own combat experience. He identified patterns in German tank employment, recognizing how Tiger and Panther commanders positioned their vehicles to maximize armor protection and firepower advantages. Understanding German tactical preferences allowed Pool to anticipate enemy positions and maneuver accordingly. If German doctrine emphasized defensive positions with clear fields of fire, Pool approached from unexpected angles, where terrain masked his advance until reaching close range. If German doctrine positioned Tigers behind defensive lines for long-range support, Pool maneuvered aggressively forward, accepting risk during the approach to reach ranges where Sherman guns could penetrate German side or rear armor. The liberation of France accelerated after Operation Cobra broke through German defensive lines in late July 1944. 3rd Armored Division spearheaded First Army's advance across northern France, moving from Normandy toward Paris and eventually toward the German border. Pool's tank participated in dozens of engagements during the advance, destroying German armor with remarkable consistency. Division records documented Pool's confirmed vehicle kills week by week through July, August, and September 1944. By early September, when 3rd Armored Division reached the German border near Aachen, Pool had destroyed 12 German tanks, including 4 Tigers and 5 Panthers. His crew's survival rate exceeded 95%, despite participating in some of the division's most intense combat actions. Other tank crews in the same company suffered casualty rates exceeding 50% during the same period. Pool's success attracted attention from division headquarters and military journalists embedded with frontline units. The Army's public relations apparatus sought positive stories about American tank crews defeating supposedly superior German armor. Pool's record provided exactly the narrative military propagandists wanted to promote, but Pool avoided publicity, declining interviews and requesting that his name not appear in news reports. His service record includes notation from September 19, 1944, documenting that he requested transfer to another tank crew to avoid attention from journalists. The transfer request was denied by battalion commander, who valued Pool's combat effectiveness too highly to reassign him for public relations considerations. The tactical principles Pool employed seem obvious in retrospect, but contradicted prevailing American tank doctrine. Official doctrine emphasized that Sherman tanks should avoid direct engagement with Tigers and Panthers, instead relying on numerical superiority, artillery support, and airstrikes to neutralize German armor. Pool's approach inverted this doctrine, deliberately seeking engagement with German heavy tanks under conditions where Sherman advantages in mobility, crew coordination, and mechanical reliability could compensate for disadvantages in armor and firepower. He positioned his tank aggressively, accepting risk during approaches to reach favorable engagement ranges. He trained his crew relentlessly during brief rest periods, reducing target acquisition and engagement times to absolute minimum. He studied terrain obsessively, identifying routes that provided concealment during advances and advantageous firing positions once engagement range was reached. The result was a combat record that seemed statistically impossible given the technical limitations of Sherman tanks facing Tigers and Panthers. Pool destroyed more Tigers in direct tank versus tank combat than entire Allied armored battalions achieved during the same period. His tactics demonstrated that technological inferiority could be overcome through superior tactical thinking, aggressive execution, and exceptional crew coordination. The lessons learned from Pool's success influenced American tank tactics for the remainder of the war and shaped post-war armor doctrine development. But the personal cost of achieving these results remained severe. Pool witnessed dozens of fellow tankers killed in combat, saw friends burn to death in disabled tanks, and survived multiple near misses where German rounds struck his Sherman without penetrating or where mechanical failures saved his crew from destruction. The psychological burden of sustained combat operations at the intensity Pool experienced would eventually take its toll, as it did on virtually every soldier who survived extended frontline service. The autumn of 1944 brought 3rd Armored Division to the Siegfried Line, Germany's western defensive barrier constructed during the 1930s. Concrete fortifications, anti-tank obstacles, and interlocking defensive positions stretched along the German border from Switzerland to the Netherlands. American forces faced the prospect of breaching fortified positions defended by increasingly desperate German forces fighting on their homeland. Pool's Sherman, now nicknamed Fury after his crew painted the name on the turret, had survived 5 months of continuous combat operations. The original vehicle had been replaced twice due to mechanical breakdown and battle damage, but Pool and his crew remained constant. They had developed coordination that bordered on telepathic communication, each crew member anticipating others' actions and needs without verbal commands during combat engagements. The fighting along the Siegfried Line introduced new tactical challenges. German forces employed Tigers and Panthers in prepared defensive positions with carefully surveyed fields of fire and pre-positioned ammunition. American tanks advancing against these positions faced withering fire from ranges where German guns could penetrate Sherman armor with ease, while remaining invulnerable to American return fire. Pool adapted his tactics accordingly, studying aerial reconnaissance photographs to identify dead ground where German defensive positions lacked clear observation. He planned approaches using terrain features that masked American advances until reaching ranges where Sherman guns could engage effectively. His platoon became specialists in night operations, moving forward during darkness to reach assault positions undetected, then attacking at dawn when visibility favored American forces equipped with superior optical equipment. October 19, 1944 marked Pool's most remarkable single engagement. 3rd Armored Division attacked German positions near Stolberg, east of Aachen. Intelligence reports indicated German forces had positioned multiple Tigers in defensive positions, covering the main approach route. American doctrine called for artillery preparation followed by infantry assault to neutralize anti-tank positions before committing armor. Pool requested permission to conduct reconnaissance in force, probing German defenses with a single tank platoon to identify defensive positions for subsequent artillery targeting. Battalion commander approved the mission with explicit instructions to withdraw immediately if encountering heavy resistance. Pool's platoon moved forward at 0430 hours, 3 hours before dawn, Darkness provided concealment but complicated navigation through unfamiliar terrain littered with rubble from previous bombardments. Pool's driver followed compass headings, advancing slowly to avoid engine noise that might alert German positions. The platoon reached a position approximately 800 meters from suspected German defensive line without encountering resistance. Pool ordered halt, waiting for dawn to provide visibility for reconnaissance observations. As morning twilight illuminated the landscape, Pool's gunner identified German tank silhouettes positioned among rubble of destroyed buildings approximately 600 meters ahead. German defensive doctrine positioned Tigers to cover likely American approach routes with interlocking fields of fire. Pool counted 5 Tigers, positioned in a rough semicircle, each tank hull down behind rubble, providing frontal protection while maintaining clear fields of fire across the approaches. American infantry attempting to advance across this killing ground would face murderous fire from multiple directions. Simultaneously, artillery could suppress but not destroy Tigers protected by rubble and building foundations. The tactical situation seemed to demand exactly the kind of deliberate set-piece assault that consumed days and cost heavy casualties. Pool saw a different possibility. The German defensive position faced west, oriented toward expected American attack from that direction. Pool's platoon had approached from the northwest, placing them outside the primary German defensive arc. More significantly, the 5 Tigers were positioned to provide mutual support against frontal attacks, but their positions actually created blind spots on their flanks, where terrain features blocked observation. Pool radioed his platoon, outlining an audacious plan. His tank would advance alone directly toward the German position, drawing attention and forcing Tigers to orient toward the apparent threat. The other 2 Shermans in his platoon would maneuver south, using a drainage ditch for concealment, to reach positions where they could engage German tanks from flank angles. The plan violated every tactical principle taught at armor school. Dividing forces in the face of superior enemy strength invited defeat in detail. Advancing a single Sherman against 5 Tigers seemed suicidal, but Pool understood that German tank commanders, confident in their vehicle's superiority, would focus on the obvious threat approaching from their front while potentially overlooking more subtle threats developing on their flanks. Human psychology and tactical overconfidence could be exploited just as effectively as technical vulnerabilities. Pool's Sherman advanced directly toward the German positions at moderate speed, deliberately drawing attention. German tank commanders observed the lone American tank approaching and made predictable decisions. They held fire, waiting for the Sherman to close to ranges where first-shot kills were guaranteed. No need to reveal positions prematurely when the American tank was approaching directly into their guns. Pool continued forward, closing to 500 meters, then 400 meters. His crew maintained steady nerves despite knowing that German guns could fire at any moment with devastating effect. At 350 meters, Pool ordered sudden acceleration and hard left turn, moving laterally across the German front rather than continuing the direct approach. This maneuver accomplished 2 objectives. First, it prevented German gunners from maintaining steady aim, as the Sherman's angular movement complicated range estimation and lead calculations. Second, it focused all German attention on Pool's tank, now presenting itself as a difficult but manageable target requiring immediate engagement before it could threaten their positions further. 3 Tigers fired nearly simultaneously at Pool's maneuvering Sherman. All 3 rounds missed as Pool's driver executed evasive maneuvers, varying speed and direction unpredictably. The Tigers' commanders, focused entirely on the maneuvering threat before them, failed to observe 2 American Shermans emerging from the drainage ditch 600 meters to their south. Pool's platoon mates had reached flanking positions undetected, while German attention remained fixed on Pool's tank. The 2 Shermans opened fire on German side armor from angles the Tigers' defensive position had not anticipated. 2 Tigers exploded within seconds as armor-piercing rounds penetrated vulnerable side plates and detonated internal ammunition. Pool's Sherman, having drawn German fire and survived through aggressive maneuvering, now turned directly toward the remaining 3 Tigers and closed rapidly. At 200 meters range, Pool's gunner fired at the closest Tiger's turret ring, the junction between turret and hull, where armor was thinner to allow turret rotation. The round penetrated, jamming the Tiger's turret and disabling its main armament. The remaining two Tigers attempted to reorient their positions to address threats from multiple directions simultaneously. But Tigers, despite their considerable strengths, suffered from slow turret traverse rates and limited reverse speed. Repositioning to address multiple threats required time that Pool's aggressive tactics denied them. Pool's Sherman closed to 150 meters and fired again, this time targeting the drive sprocket of the nearest Tiger. The round struck true, immobilizing the German tank even though it failed to penetrate the hull armor. An immobilized Tiger became a stationary target for subsequent shots. Pool's loader worked frantically, feeding rounds to the breech as fast as the gunner could fire. 3 more rounds struck the immobilized Tiger's side armor before one finally penetrated, triggering internal fires that forced the crew to abandon their vehicle. The final Tiger attempted withdrawal, reversing behind rubble to escape the American attack. But Pool had positioned his attack to prevent exactly this escape. The drainage ditch that concealed his platoon's flanking maneuver also blocked the Tiger's most direct withdrawal route. The German commander faced an impossible choice: reverse directly away from Pool's tank, exposing vulnerable rear armor, or attempt a more complicated maneuver to reach alternative withdrawal routes while under fire from 3 American tanks. The German chose withdrawal, correctly assessing that remaining in position meant certain destruction. Pool's platoon destroyed the withdrawing Tiger with concentrated fire against its rear armor at less than 300 meters range. 5 Tigers destroyed in approximately 8 minutes of sustained combat. Post-battle assessment documented the engagement as the most successful American tank action against German heavy armor recorded to that date. Pool's tactics in this engagement revealed principles that would influence armor doctrine for decades afterward. He understood that superior technology provides advantages only when employed under conditions that allow those advantages to manifest. Tigers possessed superior armor and firepower, but these advantages required clear fields of fire, prepared positions, and engagement ranges exceeding Sherman gun effectiveness. Pool's aggressive tactics denied Germans the opportunity to fight under conditions that favored their technical superiority. By accepting risk during the approach, maneuvering aggressively to complicate German gunnery, and coordinating attacks from multiple directions simultaneously, Pool transformed what should have been an insurmountable tactical problem into a decisive American victory. The engagement demonstrated that doctrine emphasizing technology and firepower alone could be defeated by superior tactical thinking and aggressive execution. 3rd Armored Division intelligence officers interviewed Pool extensively after the Stolberg engagement, documenting his tactical approach in detail for distribution throughout American armored forces in Europe. The resulting report emphasized several key principles. First, aggressive maneuver could compensate for technical inferiority by denying enemy forces the ability to employ their weapons under optimal conditions. Second, crew coordination and training intensity directly determined combat effectiveness more significantly than vehicle technical specifications. Third, psychological factors, including enemy overconfidence in their equipment, could be exploited through unexpected tactics that violated orthodox doctrine. The report concluded that American tankers possessed significant advantages in crew training quality, mechanical reliability of their vehicles, and operational sustainability that could overcome German advantages in armor protection and gun effectiveness when properly exploited through appropriate tactics. Pool received promotion to technical sergeant in November 1944 and assumed command of an entire tank platoon, 5 Sherman tanks and 25 men. His combat record now included 21 confirmed German tank kills, including 9 Tigers and 8 Panthers. More significantly, his tactics had been studied and distributed throughout First Army's armored units, influencing how American tank commanders approached combat against German heavy armor. Training materials produced in late 1944 incorporated Pool's tactical principles, teaching aggressive maneuver, exploitation of terrain and visibility conditions, and emphasis on crew coordination as methods for neutralizing German technical advantages. The psychological impact proved as significant as the tactical lessons. American tank crews who had feared Tigers and Panthers, invincible opponents, began understanding that proper tactics and aggressive execution could defeat supposedly superior German armor. The winter of 1944 brought the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's last major offensive on the Western Front. German forces attacked through the Ardennes forest in mid-December, achieving tactical surprise and creating a massive bulge in American lines. 3rd Armored Division repositioned north to contain the German offensive, participating in defensive operations that eventually halted German advances. Pool's platoon fought continuous defensive actions through late December and early January 1945, destroying German armor attempting to exploit breakthrough successes. The winter combat proved particularly brutal, with temperatures dropping below freezing and snow complicating maneuver and observation. Pool's platoon destroyed 7 German tanks during the Bulge fighting, including 3 Tigers and 2 Panthers, despite operating under conditions that heavily favored defensive operations. January 1945 brought renewed American offensive operations as German forces, having exhausted their offensive capabilities and fuel supplies, withdrew toward the Rhine River. 3rd Armored Division pursued aggressively, attempting to trap German forces west of the Rhine before they could withdraw to more defensible positions along the river's eastern bank. Pool's platoon participated in rapid advances covering 30 to 40 miles per day, dramatically faster operational tempo than the grinding attritional warfare that characterized combat along the Siegfried Line. The pursuit phase of operations favored American strengths in mechanical reliability, fuel availability, and operational sustainability. German forces, suffering from severe fuel shortages and mechanical breakdown rates exceeding 50%, could not maintain cohesive defensive positions during rapid withdrawals. Pool's combat effectiveness during this phase reached extraordinary levels. His service record documents 32 confirmed German vehicle kills between January 15 and March 10, 1945, a period of less than 8 weeks. These kills included 12 tanks, 7 Tigers among them, plus 20 additional German vehicles, including self-propelled guns, armored cars, and half-tracks. The rapid operational tempo created target-rich environments where Pool's aggressive tactics and exceptional crew coordination allowed him to engage multiple targets in single engagements. 3rd Armored Division after-action reports from this period repeatedly mention Pool's platoon as achieving exceptional results, often destroying more enemy vehicles than entire companies achieved during the same operations. The human cost of sustained combat operations at this intensity cannot be understated. Pool survived countless close calls, where German fire missed by inches or where mechanical failures prevented enemy weapons from functioning properly. He witnessed friends and fellow tankers killed in adjacent vehicles during engagements. The psychological burden of survivors' guilt, combat stress, and constant proximity to death affected every soldier who experienced sustained front-line combat. Pool's personal correspondence from this period, now preserved in military archives, reveals a man increasingly worn down by months of continuous operations. Letters to his family in Texas became shorter and less frequent. When he did write, Pool described exhaustion, frustration with endless combat, and desire for the war to end so he could return home. But he never requested relief from combat duties, never sought transfer to rear area positions, and never allowed personal struggles to affect his performance or his crew's effectiveness. March 1945 brought 3rd Armored Division to the Rhine River near Cologne. American forces prepared for the river crossing that would carry the war in Germany's industrial heartland. Pool's Sherman had been replaced again, the 4th vehicle he had commanded since landing in Normandy 9 months earlier. The constant vehicle replacements due to battle damage and mechanical wear illustrated the intensity of operations 3rd Armored Division sustained throughout the campaign. Pool's crew remained constant, however, the same 4 men who had trained together in Louisiana and landed together in Normandy. Their coordination had been refined through hundreds of combat engagements into something approaching perfection. They communicated in abbreviated phrases, sometimes single words, that conveyed complete tactical instructions. They anticipated each other's needs and actions without conscious thought. They had become, in military terminology, a perfectly functioning combat team. The Rhine crossing operations in late March 1945 proceeded more smoothly than anticipated, as German defensive capabilities had deteriorated, significantly under relentless Allied pressure. 3rd Armoured Division advanced rapidly eastward, moving deeper into Germany against fragmenting resistance. Pool's platoon participated in the advance, encountering decreasing German armour resistance as fuel shortages and ammunition scarcity immobilized remaining German tanks. The operational environment was shifting from combat against organized German units toward mopping up operations against isolated resistance pockets. Victory was approaching, inevitable and undeniable. Germany's ability to sustain organized resistance was collapsing under combined pressure from Allied advances from west and Soviet advances from east. April 30th, 1945 arrived with 3rd Armoured Division positioned near Dessau, Germany, approximately 75 miles southwest of Berlin. The European war was entering its final days. Soviet forces had encircled Berlin. German military resistance was collapsing across all fronts. Pool's platoon received orders to advance toward the Elbe River, where American and Soviet forces would meet, effectively cutting Germany in half. The mission seemed routine, a pursuit operation against fragmenting German resistance, unlikely to offer significant combat. Pool's combat record at this point documented 258 confirmed enemy vehicle kills, including 12 Tigers, 10 Panthers, and dozens of other German armoured vehicles. No other American tank commander in the European theatre had achieved comparable results. His success demonstrated conclusively that tactical excellence, aggressive execution, and exceptional crew coordination could overcome technical inferiority in armoured combat. The morning advance proceeded without incident through abandoned German villages and countryside, showing minimal war damage. By mid-afternoon, Pool's platoon approached a small town called Zschornowitz, positioned along the planned route toward the Elbe. American doctrine called for a reconnaissance before entering any built-up area where German forces might have prepared defensive positions. Pool ordered his platoon to halt while he personally reconnoitred the town's outskirts. His Sherman moved forward alone, advancing slowly along the main road entering the town. This violated Pool's own tactical principles about maintaining mutual support between tanks, but after 10 months of continuous combat operations, perhaps fatigue and confidence born from repeated success affected his judgment. Pool's Sherman rounded a slight curve in the road, approximately 200 meters from the town's first buildings. A German Panzerfaust anti-tank rocket, fired from concealed position in roadside vegetation, struck the Sherman's right front slope armor. Panzerfausts were disposable, single-shot anti-tank weapons issued widely to German infantry units during the war's final year. Cheap to manufacture and requiring minimal training to employ effectively, Panzerfausts could penetrate Sherman armor at ranges under 100 meters. The weapon that struck Pool's tank penetrated the frontal armor, sending molten metal fragments and explosive blast through the crew compartment. Pool suffered severe wounds to his legs and lower body from the penetrating blast. His driver was killed instantly. The other 3 crew members suffered various injuries but managed to evacuate the burning Sherman. Pool, despite his wounds, maintained consciousness and attempted to direct his surviving crew members to safety before he himself was pulled from the burning vehicle by soldiers from following tanks who had witnessed the attack. Medical personnel reached Pool within minutes, applying emergency treatment and evacuating him to Battalion Aid Station. Army doctors assessed his wounds as critical but potentially survivable with immediate surgical intervention. Pool was evacuated through successive medical facilities, from Battalion Aid Station to Field Hospital to evacuation, hospital, and finally to a hospital ship for transport to the United States. The war in Europe ended 8 days after Pool's wounding. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945. Pool would spend the next 14 months in military hospitals, undergoing multiple surgeries and extensive rehabilitation. His combat career had ended 300 meters from what would have been his final objective before the European War's conclusion. The irony was not lost on Pool during his long recovery. He had survived 10 months of combat against German armor, destroying more enemy tanks than seemed statistically possible given Sherman technical limitations, only to be wounded by a cheap, disposable anti-tank weapon fired by unknown German soldier in the war's final week. Recovery proceeded slowly. Pool underwent 7 separate surgeries to repair damage to his legs and reconstruct shattered bone. Doctors initially doubted he would walk again without assistance. Pool's determination, the same quality that made him an exceptional tank commander, drove his rehabilitation. He refused to accept permanent disability. Physical therapy sessions extended for hours beyond prescribed durations. Pool pushed through pain that would have defeated soldiers with less resolve. By August 1946, 15 months after his wounding, Pool walked unassisted, although with permanent limp that would affect him for the remainder of his life. The Army discharged Pool from service in September 1946 with full disability pension and numerous decorations, including 2 Silver Stars, 5 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. His official service record documented 258 confirmed enemy vehicle kills, the highest total achieved by any American tank commander in any theater during World War II. More significantly, his tactical approach had been studied, documented, and distributed throughout American armored forces, influencing how the Army trained tank crews and developed armor doctrine for decades afterward. Pool returned to Texas, settling in his hometown of Odom. He married, raised a family, and worked in the oil industry, rarely speaking publicly about his wartime experiences. Former crew members who survived the war maintained contact with Pool throughout his life, gathering occasionally for reunions where they reminisced about shared experiences and honored fallen comrades who never returned. Pool's combat record raises profound questions about how military effectiveness should be measured and what factors determine success in armored warfare. The Sherman tank entered World War II as a competent medium tank optimized for mass production and operational sustainability. By 1944, when facing Tigers and Panthers, the Sherman appeared hopelessly outmatched in direct combat. Every technical specification favored German armor. Every tactical manual emphasized avoiding direct engagement. Every training film showed Sherman crews calling for artillery and air support, rather than engaging German heavy tanks directly. Yet Pool, commanding this supposedly inferior vehicle, destroyed more German heavy tanks than most entire Allied armored divisions achieved during the entire war. His success demands explanation beyond simple attribution to courage or luck. Pool succeeded because he understood principles that transcended vehicle specifications. He recognized that tank combat occurs within complex environments, where dozens of variables affect outcomes: terrain, visibility, crew coordination, mechanical reliability, tactical surprise, psychological factors, and command decisions all influence combat results at least as significantly as armor thickness or gun penetration characteristics. Pool manipulated these variables systematically, creating conditions where Sherman advantages could compensate for Sherman disadvantages. His aggressive maneuver denied German crews the opportunity to employ their vehicles under optimal conditions. His exceptional crew training reduced target acquisition and engagement times below what German crews achieved despite their superior equipment. His understanding of German tactical doctrine allowed him to anticipate enemy positions and approach from unexpected directions. His willingness to accept risk during approaches allowed him to reach ranges where Sherman guns could penetrate German armor effectively. The lessons learned from Pool's combat career influenced American armor doctrine profoundly during the Cold War decades. Army armor schools studied his engagements as case studies, demonstrating that tactical excellence could overcome technical inferiority. Training programs emphasized crew coordination, aggressive maneuver, and exploitation of enemy weaknesses rather than focusing exclusively on vehicle technical characteristics. The development of American main battle tanks from the M48 through the M60 to the Mon. Abrams reflected this balanced approach, seeking vehicles that combined firepower and protection with mobility, reliability, and crew-friendly design that facilitated training and sustained operations. American armor doctrine never again relied exclusively on technical superiority, instead emphasizing combined arms coordination, crew quality, and tactical flexibility as essential components of combat effectiveness. Pool's story also illuminates the human dimension of armored warfare, too often obscured by focus on technical specifications and tactical analysis. Tank combat during World War II demanded extraordinary courage from crews who fought in vehicles that could become death traps within seconds if penetrated by enemy fire. Sherman crews understood their tanks' vulnerabilities intimately. They knew that German guns could penetrate their armor from ranges where they couldn't effectively reply. They watched friends die in burning tanks, witnessed the horrific results of successful enemy fire, and knew that each combat engagement might be their last. Yet they continued fighting, day after day, week after week, month after month. Pool and crews like his demonstrated courage that transcended simple bravery in individual moments. They showed sustained courage across extended periods, the kind of moral strength that allows soldiers to continue functioning under conditions that would break most human beings. The psychological burden of sustained combat affected all frontline soldiers regardless of their success in combat. Pool's letters from the front, now preserved in military archives, reveal a man increasingly affected by combat stress, survivor guilt, and exhaustion, despite his exceptional combat record. Success in battle did not protect soldiers from psychological trauma. Pool witnessed numerous friends and fellow tankers killed in combat. He survived countless near misses, where death missed him by inches or seconds. He carried responsibility for crew members, whose lives depended on his tactical decisions. The accumulated weight of these experiences affected him profoundly, as it did all soldiers who experienced sustained frontline combat, regardless of how effectively they performed their duties. Post-war study of Pool's combat record by military historians and armor experts consistently emphasizes several key findings. First, vehicle technical characteristics matter significantly in armored combat, but they do not determine outcomes except under conditions where all other variables remain equal. Combat rarely occurs under such idealized conditions. Second, crew training and coordination quality affects combat effectiveness, at least as significantly as vehicle specifications. Well-trained crews in inferior vehicles can defeat poorly trained crews in superior vehicles through better tactics and execution. Third, aggressive tactical execution creates opportunities that cautious approaches cannot achieve. Pool's willingness to accept risk during approaches and engage enemy armor directly rather than waiting for supporting fires enabled him to destroy German tanks that defensive tactics would have left untouched. Fourth, leadership matters enormously in combat effectiveness. Pool's tactical judgment, courage under fire, and ability to maintain crew cohesion under extreme stress made his platoon dramatically more effective than average units equipped with identical vehicles. Lafayette Pool died in 1991 at age 72 from complications related to his wartime wounds. His funeral in Texas drew former crew members from across the United States, men who had served with him during that extraordinary 10-month period, when they achieved results that seemed impossible given the vehicles they commanded and the enemies they faced. They remembered a quiet Texan who never sought publicity, never boasted about his achievements, and never stopped feeling responsible for crew members wounded or killed during the war. They remembered a leader who inspired through example rather than rhetoric, who shared every risk and hardship with his crews, and who never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. They remembered someone who demonstrated that excellence in combat requires not just physical courage but moral courage, not just tactical skill but profound humanity. The Sherman tank pool commanded sits today in military museums as both artifact and symbol. It represents American industrial capacity that produced 50,000 Shermans during World War II, enabling numerical superiority that overwhelmed technically superior German armor through sheer mass. It represents compromise and practicality, a design optimized for reliable mass production rather than technical excellence. But Pool's combat record suggests the Sherman also represents something more profound about military effectiveness. The tank succeeded not despite its limitations, but because those limitations were accepted and compensated for through superior tactics, training, and leadership. The Sherman became effective because soldiers like Pool refused to accept that technical inferiority meant inevitable defeat. They studied enemy capabilities, developed tactics that exploited enemy weaknesses while minimizing their own disadvantages, and executed aggressively despite the risks inherent in their approach. Modern military forces study Pool's career for insights into contemporary challenges. The tension between technical superiority and tactical excellence remains relevant as military technology advances. Armed forces must balance investment in advanced weapons systems against investment in training, leadership development, and tactical flexibility. Pool's combat record suggests that excessive faith in technical solutions produces brittle military forces that fail when facing adaptive enemies who exploit unexpected vulnerabilities. Truly effective military forces require balanced investment across technology, training, leadership, and doctrine development. The most advanced weapons achieve little in the hands of poorly trained crews or under incompetent leadership. Conversely, well-trained and well-led forces can achieve remarkable results, even with equipment that appears inferior on paper. Pool's story ultimately teaches that warfare remains fundamentally human endeavor, regardless of technological advancement. Machines provide capabilities, but humans decide how those capabilities are employed, under what conditions, toward what objectives. Pool's genius lay not in any technical knowledge beyond what every trained tank commander possessed, but in his ability to think clearly under extreme stress, make rapid tactical decisions based on incomplete information, and inspire his crews to perform exceptionally under conditions that would paralyze lesser men. These qualities, fundamentally human qualities, determined his success more than any characteristic of the Sherman tank he commanded. They represent timeless military virtues that remain relevant, regardless of how technology evolves. The Sherman that destroyed more Tigers than Germany's entire Panther production in 1943 achieved this remarkable result because Lafayette Pool commanded it, because his crew trained intensively and fought cohesively, because they refused to accept that technical inferiority meant inevitable defeat, and because they demonstrated daily that tactical excellence and aggressive execution could overcome material disadvantages. Their story deserves remembering not as historical curiosity, but as profound lesson about military effectiveness, human courage, and the timeless truth that in warfare, as in life, success depends less on the tools we possess than on how wisely and courageously we employ them. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.